And we are live. Welcome back to the Content Swap Podcast. You are joined, as always, by Parker and...
Aaliyah. Oh.
It's one of those podcasts.
Yeah. Aaliyah.
Aaliyah! Believe it! Well, if you are new to the Content Swap Podcast, this is a podcast in which we assign each other content every week and we talk about it on the podcast. So before we dive into this week's content, we're going to go ahead and give a quick life news update on just things that we've engaged with in the past week or anything else that's new with us. So with that said, take it away.
I personal life wise, same old, as usual. Content I've been engaging in. I did indeed watch House of the Dragon, all cut up. I think we're actually I think a new episode came out and we haven't watched it.
Yeah, we're one episode behind.
Yeah. But exciting times. I'm really enjoying it. I feel like now I'm finally in the Game of Thrones universe alongside everyone else as it's happening.
You're in the zeitgeist.
I am, and it's thrilling. I always think of Olivia Cook being like stunning.
I don't remember that, but all right.
That was when the whole Spagliato thing
happened.
She was like, oh, stunning. So yeah, very exciting stuff. Really enjoying it. It gives me all kinds of conflicting feelings. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I've been watching a lot of shows. I think since we've come back home from California, I'm just in a little bit of a funk because I miss it. I miss California. I miss the puppies. I miss the really good weather. And so I'm just kind of I don't know, down in the dumps a little bit. And it feels like back to reality, you know? So I've been binge watching comfort shows. So I think it was over this past weekend, I binge watched just a bunch of episodes of Hey Arnold. And that show is actually freaking hilarious.
It's a really good show. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's a great show. I mean, we all knew it was a phenomenal show, but watching that many episodes in one day, just back to back, there's a character, I forget his name. It's one of the people who lives in the house with Arnold. And he's just the funniest cartoon character I've ever seen.
Is it the guy?
It's the guy who's living off his wife. Yeah.
Yeah. he's got a beard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's so freaking funny. He's so funny. I highly recommend just go back and binge watch Hey Arnold because you will be cracking up. It's great. So I binge watched that, and then today I was not feeling very well. Woke up with the worst migraine I've had in a minute. And so I've been binge watching How I Met Your Mother, which I think I talked about a few weeks ago. So made it through quite a few episodes of that. And then the last thing I do want to talk about content-wise, I did start a book called Pachinko. And so far it's really good. It's kind of starts out in the early 1900s. But currently where I'm at in the book, it's in the 30s. And it basically follows a Korean family who I think at some point they will move to Japan. Well, who's left currently will move to Japan. And so I think it's kind of I guess you can consider it historical fiction. I don't really know. But yeah, it's just kind of talking about the times and it's particularly focused on women at the moment. So I really enjoy it. And if that's something of interest to you, definitely check it out. I mean, it's a super popular book. It has a TV show, which I did not know. I had heard of the book. I knew about the book for quite some time and always wanted to read it. And then I heard that there was a show when I finally decided to get the book. So yeah, I don't know if the show's any good, but maybe that's something that I end up watching once I finish the book. It's kind of a hefty book, so it might take me some time to get through it. But yeah, so that's about it for me. How about you?
Yeah, I have just been, we came back, and on the flights back, I played a lot of Nintendo Switch. Let's see, I finished, I'm still playing Paper Mario. I'm slowly kind of chipping away at that game. And I just finished chapter 6, which is the train chapter that I talked about last week, and now I'm on to chapter 7, which takes place on the moon, which is always a fun chapter to encounter in that game. So yeah, I'm making some good steady progress. It's only an 8-chapter game, so I'm almost done with it. And I'm about to be traveling once again tomorrow and coming back on Saturday. So I'm sure I will be playing more of that game then as well. However, also on my Switch, I mentioned last week that I had started playing Super Metroid, which is a Super Nintendo game that was released in, I think, the early 90s. It's considered like Metroid 3, and I finished it, and it was really good. I think my one critique of that game, because it's so beloved and iconic and like kind of I don't want to say inspired, but like it kind of just like propelled the whole Metroidvania genre into like what it has become today. So it's a very influential game. I think my one critique of it is that there's a lot of like backtracking in that game, so it's very easy to kind of get lost and not really know where should I be going next. So I actually, to finish it without feeling like I was going to spend hours and hours and hours trying to figure things out that were really hard to figure out, I had to use a guide like a lot in the back half of the game. I played the first half just kind of going in blind, and then I was like, all right, if I don't use a guide on some of these parts, I will be lost forever. So that would be my one critique of the game, but I finished it, and it does hold up really, really well. It's a very well-made game. And then I decided, well, heck, let me play a bunch of these old Metroid games. So I'm trying to now play through like the side-scrolling Metroid series in order of release of the best version of each game. So like Metroid 1, for example, came out in like the 80s and is a really old game, but it was remade in like 2004 as Metroid Zero Mission, and like Metroid 2 was remade in like 2017 or 2018 or something. So I'm playing them in chronological release order, but by only by the games that like meet modern standards. So I played Super Metroid. Now I'm playing Metroid Fusion, which is technically Metroid 4. Then after Fusion, I'm going to play Metroid Zero Mission, which is technically Metroid 1. Then I'm going to play Metroid 2 Return of Samus, which is the 3DS game, which is a remake of a Game Boy Color game. And then I've already played Metroid Dread before, but I might play it again just while I'm on this Metroid kick, because these games are not that long. So, which is Metroid 5. So I'm gonna play it 3, 4, 1, 2, 5, which is fun.
That sounds like a lot.
But it's not. It's not. Like, I would say of those games, Metroid Dread's maybe the longest one, and Super Metroid would be the next longest. But I read that like Metroid Fusion is only like 5 hours. And I think Metroid Zero Mission is also only 5 hours. So, I mean, with a bunch of flights and things, like, you can breeze through that pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I'm finding Metroid Fusion to be much more linear. I think, like, maybe they took the criticism of, like, the one that I had playing Super Metroid of, like, there are just times where I do not know what to do. Whereas Metroid Fusion has a whole system in place of, like, go into one of these rooms and the computer will tell you where to go next directly. So you're never really quite lost in that game. So I'm figuring I'm going to finish that one a lot faster than I finished Super Metroid. Then beyond that, I'm back. I've been reunited with my PlayStation 5 and I have decided, while we were gone, I was really kind of going back and forth on Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. It's a game I've been playing since January, and I took a brief break from playing it to play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which was like a 100-hour game, and then I went back to Like a Dragon, and it's like Like a Dragon is also just like a really long game, and I got 45 hours deep into it before we left, and then I came back and I was like, I don't know, I want to move on. I want to start playing other games on my PlayStation. I don't want to keep playing these games that are like dozens and dozens of hours long. But I decided, you know what? Like, I've come so far. I got to brave through this. So it's a 14-hour game. And when we came back on Thursday, I was on chapter 8. And I want to say on Sunday, I played that game for like 14 hours or something. I'm now like 60 hours deep. I'm on chapter 13, which is the second to last chapter. So I'm almost done, and I can't wait to finish it. But at the same time, playing it for 14 hours straight did kind of make me realize and remember, like, this is indeed a very, 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 very good game. But it's also just like really long. And there's a lot of dialogue that doesn't matter, but it's kind of just like part of the flavor of the game to like have all of these different encounters with all these different characters, with all these different conversations. And I think I just kind of hit a point 60 hours in where I'm like, you know what? It's time to just finish this game. I don't need to read every single conversation between every single character. So I find myself like, I'm still trying to like do a lot of the side quest stuff to help me out when it comes to like being strong enough for the main quest stuff, but I'm skipping through a lot of it, which is kind of sad. But at this point, I'm just invested in the story and want to finish the game. So that's where I'm at with that. Last two notes here. I brought up last week that I was reading this book called The One that you recommended to me, and I was like, oh, I'm going to finish it by the end of the week. And well, today's Tuesday, so the week ended a couple days ago, but I finished The One today, and it was really good.
Yay!
I don't think it was like perfectly well written at all times, and I think like some parts maybe were a little predictable, but it makes up for that by being wildly unpredictable in other parts. And the unpredictability kind of seems to happen there's going to be something unpredictable that happens like at least within a 10-page chunk, you know? If not like 3 unpredictable things in a 10-page chunk. So yeah, it's really twisty and turny and fun in that regard. And it's like a 430-page book, and I finished it in like, I don't know, 2 weeks or something, which...
That's the fastest I've ever seen you read a book.
I know. That's crazy.
And I'm excited. It was one that I recommended.
Yeah. You did a great job recommending it.
I know.
Oh, she knows.
I get so much enjoyment out of recommending a book to someone, and they come back to me like, I loved it. It just makes my whole day. That's why I loved working at a bookstore, because it was just the best feeling in the world. And then they'd be like, what do you have for me next? And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I will say, yeah, that the experience of reading that book, I think, has taken me out of the book slump that I have been in this year, because I did read.
Wow.
I know, right? I'm just complimenting you, giving you all the flowers. Because I mean, at the beginning of the year, I had finished reading some books that I really liked. I had read Recursion.
Another one that I recommended.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I had read Recursion, which I read through pretty quickly, and then I read Press Reset, which was Jason Schreier's last book, and he's like a reporter for Bloomberg who talks a lot about gaming news, and I listened to his podcast, and he writes his own books specifically on the games industry, and he's got a new one coming out later this year that I'm excited to read. But on his podcast, he also like reads a lot of books and makes book recommendations, in addition to talking a lot about recent gaming news and stuff like that. So I had read his book, and then I had read Chain Gang All Stars, which was like maybe the most boring book I've ever read. Some parts of it were truly great, and then other parts were like truly not fun, because it was just the language was just so dense at all times that it was like, man, 400 pages of this, seriously? And then I read that Marvel, like the History of Marvel book, which was also a very good book, but also just like very dense. So then, to read your book, was great. And now I'm like, oh, what other books can I read? So listening to Jason Schreier's podcast, Triple Click, he had recommended a book called, I think it was him that recommended it, or one of his co-hosts recommended it. It's called, I'm holding it in my hands here. It's called The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels, which is kind of like a true crime type book. Mm-hmm. And I haven't really read one of these true crime books, so I'm excited to read it. It's by Janice Hallett.
Nice. I love this moment you're in. I feel like you've been picking up so many more books, and like before bed you want to read, and that's super exciting to me. I'm like, ooh, a reading buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. Reading's fun. Everybody should go read. Maybe it's because we watched that Reading Rainbow documentary.
I wanted to watch that documentary, and you were like, I don't really know a lot about Reading Rainbow. And then afterwards, you like had the song in your head. You were singing the song 24/7. You're like, Reading Rainbow's great.
Let's go to the bookstore and buy some books.
I was like, wow, Reading Rainbow changed this adult man's life. I'm like, I can't believe you didn't really watch it as a kid. I loved Reading Rainbow.
I watched it when I was like really, really, really young at like the babysitter's house.
But I'm surprised like your school didn't, because like in school, like that's where I got exposed to Reading Rainbow. It's like in school we watched it all the time.
We didn't
in like
watch
elementary
school,
school.
like, ever.
Wow.
I went to a private elementary school, so I don't know.
Y'all are too good for Reading Rainbow.
I mean, we watched Bill Nye and the Magic School Bus in science.
I mean, we watched Bill Nye too and Magic School Bus, but like. That's just science.
Instead of just
you got to cover all the bases.
Instead of watching TV about reading, we just read. How about that?
Yes. What you did was you watched Reading Rainbow, and then they say, okay, we're going to the library. And then you get all excited because you just watched Reading Rainbow, and they recommended some books, and maybe the library has those books, and then you can check them out. I love going to the library.
Maybe my school should have done that. Because I did not grow up with an affinity for reading at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I think I was 20 that I said, hey, I'm
going to check out a book.
I should read a book. Yeah. That is not even a joke. I mean, like, so like I didn't, all the way through high school, I think, like, every time I was assigned a book for a class, I think I had actually read the book like 3 times in my life. And it wasn't until I got to community college English class, like my first quarter, that I actually read the books that I was assigned. Wow. And then that, I think, kind of made me realize, like, whoa, I just like read a whole book. That's crazy. And then I think it was my junior year or I think it was my senior year of college. I was 21. I decided to read books.
Wow. I mean, it is crazy. Like, we went to like Target, and I was like pointing out all my favorite children's books, and I was like, if you give a mouse a cookie, and you were like, what? I was like, you haven't read If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? Like,
I know.
Oh my gosh. I feel like
video games were my books.
Oh my, no, I loved going to the library at school. I loved the Scholastic Book Fair. Like, I'd always beg my mom for like $20 to get a book at the bookstore, and it was always so sad when like the book you wanted, because there were like cool books that came with like toys and stuff, and like you'd want that one, but then it was like $50, and my mom was like, no, I'm not giving you $50. And so I'd always be so sad about it because I only had $20. And then I would, like, my dad, like, after school or on the weekends would take me to the library, and we'd get drawing art books because my dad really liked to draw, and so it was like our fun activity together. And so we do that. And then, like, yeah, it just, like, I was, like, one of those kids who, like, I really enjoyed, especially once I got to, like, middle school and, like, high school, like, summer reading books. You know, you had, like, your summer reading list, and you had to, like, you had to, like, read a book
that
off.
Was like, don't make me.
No, you had to, like, read a book off the list and, like, be prepared when school started to, like, do some sort of activity with it. And I loved it. I got so excited for summer reading stuff, and I'd be like, which one am I gonna read?
So I think I read the first half of The Pearl by John Steinbeck, like, in middle school, and then I was just like, nah.
Oh my gosh, no. I remember some of my summer reading books. I read a book, Flipped, which I think they turned into a movie. I read that for a summer reading book. I read a book called, like, Fever 17
all
something.
Right, I get it. You like reading.
Anyways, I love it. And so I love that you're, diving into it, and that you now love Reading Rainbow.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should make Gaming Rainbow because, you know, you know so much about books. You get excited to recommend people books. I know a lot about video games, and I will happily recommend any video games to anybody. So
Yeah.
they're both things that go deep.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you can't do a Gaming Rainbow because like kids like games regardless.
Yeah, but there's so many games that people might not know about that are like the true classics,
Yeah,
like
but you're
of
not gonna make a
literature, but like
PBS
game
show.
literature.
You're not gonna make a PBS show.
The
that's
kids
like,
need to learn about
go
Super
play video
Metroid.
games. Yeah.
The kids need to know about Super Metroid.
No, the kids need to read.
Everybody's like, oh, hey, Shakespeare, he invented all of these tropes or whatever. And it's like, hey, Super Metroid, they invented all these tropes.
No.
The kids need to know.
They already know. They're already on the internet too much. I feel like literacy rates are going down. We need shows like Reading Rainbow. They need to bring it back.
That's fair. You know what also exists?
What?
Visual novels. And those are just video games. But with a lot of reading in them. Like they're stories. Sometimes they're a little choose your own adventure, or there's like branching choices and branching pathways.
Sure.
Like remember when we played Zero Escape, Virtue's Last Reward? That was pretty
I did
cool.
not like it.
Yeah, and you were like, oh, I have to read.
Too much reading.
What the heck is that about?
It's staring at a screen. I don't want to stare at a screen. I need paper.
That's fair.
That's why I don't like to read on my iPad unless I absolutely have to.
I would enjoy it if screens could be less abrasive on the eyeballs.
You lay on a picnic blanket and you read a book. It's lovely.
That's fair. All right, well, moving along.
I know, we got on a reading tangent.
Go
read.
Go
everyone.
read. Everybody go read. Go find a book and go read it.
Read one book before the end of the summer.
Yes, one book.
If you're not a reader.
Ask Aaliyah for a recommendation.
Oh, yeah, just DM me. Hit me up.
Or just like, I don't know, find somebody that you like and respect and trust the opinion of. And when they recommend a book, go check it out. And just say, yeah, I'll go check that book out,
Yep.
Whenever Bill Gates releases his like best books ever list every year, go check out one. Yeah, apparently.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Go check one of those out. Or I don't know, maybe Obama does it too. So
I trust his opinion.
Yeah, go check out one of the books that Obama recommended last year.
I know, when he puts out his little music thing, I'm like, Barack.
Oh yeah. That's
always
always
listen
fun.
to Megan Thee Stallion.
Yeah. All right, well, last update from me. I started watching more Psych Odyssey episodes yesterday, and I'm going to continue that, and I'm going to do it. And we did an episode on that a few episodes ago. Go listen to that if you want to know more about that. But it's really interesting, and I'm going to keep watching it, and I hope to finish it.
Nice.
Anyway, that's my final update.
Cool.
Shall we dive into the assignments?
Yes. Don't you need to pack?
Yeah. But we're recording a podcast episode right now. I can't pack while I'm recording.
I know. I just thought about it. I was like, wait, has he packed yet?
No. I have my packing list, though.
Gotcha.
And speaking of books, I read Marie Kondo's book about tidying up like 5 years ago. So my folding game on all my clothes is great. My stuff is super well organized. So you know what? Packing ain't no thing. Doesn't take that much time at all. Nice. I know exactly what I need to put in, and I go boop, 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 and I'm packed within 10 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway. So this is a very special episode of the Content Swap Podcast in that we have been planning it for so dang long.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, we're going to talk about the Breakfast Club, and then we're going to talk about E.T. and
80s, baby.
80s iconic films,
80s.
all that. Woo woo. So yeah, first up we have Breakfast Club, which I was assigned. This is a classic John Hughes film, written and directed by John Hughes. Mm-hmm. The story follows a group of 5 teenagers who are all in detention on a Saturday, and they're in high school, and basically it's just them being stuck there all day long for like 9 hours or something. And, it starts with them all kind of like not really liking each other. They're all part of different social circles, different groups. Mm-hmm. They all come from a different...
They're all kind of a cliche.
Yeah, they're all kind of cliches of different archetypes of teenager. Mm-hmm. And they start things out kind of not really getting along. Bender is kind of the
played by Judd Nelson.
He's kind of the like the outcast kind of bad boy. Mm-hmm. I guess his archetype that the movie identifies him as is the criminal. Mm-hmm. He is just chatting it up with everybody because he does not care. He's
he just likes to push at people.
Yeah, he likes to push at people. And, with him, you've got Molly Ringwald as the princess. You've got Emilio Estevez as the jock. You've got Anthony Michael Hall,
I think so,
as the nerd.
Yeah.
And then brain. I don't know the fifth girl's name.
I think her name's like Amy something.
While you're pulling that up, she is more of the she's the more socially outcast of the group.
Yeah, she's like the weird girl.
Yeah, I think they refer to her as the basket case, which is not the most up to code term that we use.
It's played by Ali Sheedy.
Ali Sheedy, okay. But you can tell she's a little bit more troubled compared to the rest of the group to a degree. But so those are their little archetypes that they have, and yeah, I mean, Bender, the criminal, he's he's just causing a ruckus, and I want to say like half of the movie is him just kind of causing a ruckus, mm-hmm. and they have these little interpersonal conflicts of like him pushing at people, and then Emilio Estevez's character being like, hey man, watch it, I'll get a temper. And Molly Ringwald's princess character is just like, I'm not a virgin. And like that's her whole thing. And then Anthony Michael Hall's genius brain character, the nerd, is just kind of like, hey, I'm cool too, guys. Or, like, he's trying to like.
He just wants to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, he wants to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, when like the big three are having their chats, and then you've got what did you say her name was?
Her real name is Ali Sheedy.
Ali Sheedy.
Sheedy.
All right, Ali Sheedy is kind of just like watching all of them because she does not talk for the first like 2/3 of the movie. So
yeah,
it's really just that. Kind of like the whole time. At some point, they decide like, hey, we're all going to go running around in the halls. And Bender picks up like his marijuana from his locker. They end up going back to the library where they're all supposed to be for detention. And they end up like smoking marijuana in the library. And that scene was kind of weird because like Emilio Estevez wasn't gonna go do it with them. They're like doing it in the corner, and then suddenly he's like hotboxing a room by himself. And then they like play music really loud, and he slams the door, and like the glass breaks, and they're all dancing, and it's like kind of weird.
I like read this. I did not write this fun fact down, but I read it, and I don't know how true it is, but I read that like John Hughes' biggest regret with the movie was doing that like glass breaking when he slams the door. And I was like, that's such a random like thing. I mean, yes, it is random that it was in the movie, but like such a small thing to regret.
I mean, it makes sense to me because I think that to me was the one thing that didn't fit with the rest of the movie. I was just like, what was that for? And it would be kind of a big deal that his character did that, like broke a glass door. But I digress. Regardless, I mean
he didn't slam the door, and that's what made the glass break. He like screamed, and then the glass broke.
Okay, which even
worse.
Even worse. Yeah, that just kind of like breaks the realism of the movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
So like, yeah, at one point they all get high. Then at one point, like, I would say the true meat and potatoes of the movie is one scene where they're all kind of sitting down and they're reflecting on, like, their social standing at the school and how they would choose to treat each other if, like, now some of them kind of consider each other friends, but if they were to see each other in the halls, they might not necessarily, like, say hi to each other. Or they'd say hi, but then they'd, like, make fun of that person to their actual friends immediately afterwards. And so they're kind of like getting into that, and then they're talking about the impact that their parents have on their lives and why their parents have kind of shaped who they are, but they don't want to be like their parents. But then maybe they're destined to become like their parents, even though they don't like their parents. And it's just kind of, this like coming of age moment that feels like it was perhaps subversive for the time. Having this kind of like open dialogue about something that teenagers maybe just do innately without really truly thinking about it. So I liked that aspect of the movie for sure. But then like...
Wait, can I just point out real quick? Because you said like that's kind of like the big part, which I agree is like one of the big parts. But I think even before that too, like the thing that kind of gets them to that place is earlier in the movie when they have a moment where they start to learn about people's like home life.
Yeah.
And so they learn like, because Bender is, like I said, kind of poking at everybody, and he's like, oh, I'm sure you're like, your parents act like this to like the brain guy, and is like, oh, like you're the golden child, like you make good grades, you're every like parent's dream. And then he like mimics them, and you kind of see like on the brainy kid's like face, like he's kind of like, it's not like it's not great. And then they ask Bender like, well, what about your parents? And then you kind of learn like how abusive his parents are. And so I think that sparks it, and is what ultimately gets us to later on in the movie when they sit down and really hash it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So they kind of hash it out, and then yeah, Molly Ringwald's character then decides she's gonna make out with Judd Nelson's Bender character, and then Molly Ringwald also puts makeup on Ali Sheedy's character, who's like, her face is mostly covered by her hair for most of the movie, but then she like puts makeup on her and does her hair a little bit and gives her like a nice blouse. And it's like she's transformed. You could see her face, and Emilio Estevez is like, whoa, and he like decides to make out with her after detention, and then they all go home. Random. Yeah, and then they all go home, and the movie's over. And it's like, yeah, yeah, all right.
The ending's not great.
So I understand that this movie is iconic, and I can understand why for many reasons, but at the end of viewing it through a very like 2024 lens, I was like, this movie's kind of weird, and something about it feels incomplete as a movie. Yeah, like for as iconic as it is, and for how much I know about it, I thought there was going to be a bit more there. But I think it's also one of those things maybe where, yeah, you know about this iconic movie, but you've never seen it, and then you watch it, and you're like, oh, that's what that is? But then when you rewatch it, you're like, oh, yeah, like that. That's how I felt about when we watched Alien. Because the first time I watched Alien, I think I reacted the same way you reacted watching it for the first time. But then watching it a second time with you, I was like, oh, this is good stuff. So I feel like in 5 years, if I rewatch The Breakfast Club, I'll be like, oh yeah, Breakfast Club.
Yeah, I think too, like, so two things. I think it hits different when you watch this as a teen. So like my first time watching it was when I was in high school. So it's like, I don't know, you like bits and pieces of each character you kind of like resonate with, and yeah, it just like, and I think the Brat Pack documentary, although I didn't love that documentary, I do think it gave me a new perspective, because like at this time, like teen voices weren't really heard, and like there weren't really pieces of media that were centered around teenagers and like what the teenage experience is like.
That makes sense.
And so like I think that's why The Breakfast Club was such a success and so iconic, is because it's like such a simple movie, but it just really emphasizes like teenagers have a lot of things to say, and like they are experiencing all these different things, and there's different experiences that every teen goes through that impacts the way that they're navigating their social circles at school and things like that. And I don't know, I feel like teenage voices go overlooked even now. I think teenage voices, it's easier now because there's social media, so like teenagers can like talk on the internet and things like that and share their stories, I guess. But
what are like popular teen shows right now?
I have no clue.
Like The Summer I Turned Pretty or something. I don't.
Is that a show, or I thought that was a movie? It might be a show. I don't know.
I think it's a show. But I think I get what you're saying. Like,
yeah, like
the Breakfast Club walked so that The Summer I Turned Pretty could run. You know,
I don't know if that's a fair comparison.
So that the Kissing Booth could run. You know, like so that any of this stuff could exist today.
Yeah,
you know?
and I feel like
even the Power Rangers.
Yeah, I feel like I think what I love about this movie, despite a lot of the dialogue is deeply problematic. I'm sure. It's the 80s,
it's dated.
so like,
it's just a different. I don't even feel like it's fair to call it out as problematic. I mean, it's just like obviously it's problematic, but it's just dated and of the time.
Yeah, for sure. But I think like very few pieces of media, even like post Breakfast Club, I feel like really dive into like the struggles of like if a young person doesn't have a good home life, like how do their parents impact them, and like how do all these different things and what kinds of experience. I mean, I guess like
Freaks and Geeks kind of try to touch on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Euphoria also kind of, I mean, Euphoria has a lot of problems.
Yeah, Breakfast
but like,
Club walks so Euphoria could run.
Yeah, like I feel like Euphoria, like it like really digs deep into like what teenagers are. Oh wait, you have like things like Degrassi. You have things like.
Well, yeah, I mean there was a whole bunch of stuff. I was trying to think current day. Yeah.
Current day, I feel like Euphoria is probably the best comparison. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I just like that. I just like that piece of it. And like when you think about when you were a teen. And, you know, you see these people every day at school and you just have no clue. You have no clue when they go home, like, what is it like?
Right.
Like, there might be a kid who they don't go home to, like, food or something, you know? Like, you just don't know what each person's going through. And you only know who they are in those, like, kind of brief interactions at school.
In the context of
school. Exactly. And so it's just like, I don't know. I just love it.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
When I used to work in IOP programs, it feels like
intensive outpatient.
Yeah, program? That's intense. Yes, I thank you. When I worked in youth mental health intensive outpatient programs for teenagers, I don't know. It felt a little Breakfast Clubby in its own way. Yeah.
I mean, like you make a new friend and like you go to their house for the first time. You're like, oh, like this is your house. Interesting. And it's like, it gives you a whole, just seeing their house, like gives you a whole new perspective of them.
Right. And when I worked in those programs, Thursday was multifamily group day. So everybody's parents were there. And then you got to see how they interacted. And then it really would paint a picture of like the whole everything.
Right.
Right. And it was always, it was, so I'm not trying to say too much on it, but no, it was just so very, very, very impactful to see all of that play out in real time.
So that's like the biggest reason why I love this movie, because it just highlights that of like teens are going through some things. Like I know
for sure.
I like have conversations with like older people and they're like, I just don't understand your generation. Like I don't understand the youth today. And it's like,
well, maybe because people like you are saying they don't understand them and aren't willing to sit and listen and talk to them, that they are so hard for you to understand because they feel misunderstood.
Exactly. I feel like teenage voices are very powerful, and it is important to listen to them.
Yeah.
Now, do teens do some dumb things sometimes? Of course, but they're teenagers, you know? Like, they're gonna make mistakes. They're gonna do dumb things.
Yeah. I mean, teens are always gonna be doing dumb things. There's nothing that we can really control about that.
Yeah.
It's you know, as long as the things that they're doing are not, you know, violent or hurtful towards other people, then like, I don't know, keep letting teens do dumb things.
Yeah.
They'll learn, hopefully.
Yeah. I love chatting to the teens. They're so funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, they're thinking of things like way beyond, I feel like, what I was thinking as a teen. Like, it's because of social media. They are so aware.
Oh, it's my favorite thing to compare, like, the fashion of when we were 13 years old versus, like, the fashion of 13-year-olds now.
Yeah.
It's actually a little scary for the 13-year-olds now.
Yeah.
And then it's just, like, it's matured maybe a little too fast.
Yeah.
But also just contrasting it with what we thought was, like... hip.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, when we were 13.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like even you look at like the 80s or the 90s or the 70s, and then even now, and you're like, yeah, that stuff's cool. I think
we had worst fashion.
I feel like our generation, like the
worst.
mid 2000s,
horrible.
Yeah, absolutely
horrible.
The most atrocious fashion. Like, truly. I wonder if in 10 years people are going to look back on that and like yearn for it. And they're going to be like, oh
gosh.
Yeah, like,
I hope not.
Let's bring back
low-rise jeans.
Kids. Yeah.
Like, zebra print shirts, those like studded belts. Like, oh, I hope not.
Like super skinny jeans. I love that meme where it's like when you find the guy that sent an IM to your girl that said RAR or something.
Like RAWR.
Yeah. XD.
I know, we were so cringy, but I kind of,
we were still figuring it out, you know.
But it's like, I love, it was everybody. Like at the time, like it was
all of us.
All of us. So like we can all collectively look back and be like, oh, what were we doing? But yeah.
Raffle.
Literally, I know. Like the teens in our community, because I worked at the bookstore, some of them also worked at the bookstore. So I got to chat with them, and like, they will roast me. They will roast me for everything. And I'm like, I'm old. Oh my gosh, I hate this. Like, I had Apple Music, and they were like, what are you doing with Apple Music? That's gross.
I mean, even when I was like 20, I was with my friend and her little sister at Starbucks, and her little sister was, I think, 15.
Yeah.
And I ordered a white mocha. Yeah. Which is still my order today.
Yeah.
And I got no whip, and her little sister was like, ew, like, what are you doing? First off, getting a white mocha, but then getting no whip on it.
That's like her on the white mocha. That's kind of gross.
She's like, that's the one drink that you're supposed to have whip if you're gonna get it at all. And I'm like, oh,
it cuts deep.
I know.
It cuts so deep.
When a teenager tells you you're not cool, that sucks.
I freaking went to Pilates in the morning at 7 a.m. and like you have to wear these like grippy socks because it's like the reformer Pilates where you're on a machine. And so like it's so hard to put on your like tennis shoes with those grippy socks. So I just throw my Crocs. I'm like, I'm just going to work out and going straight home. But there was a sale happening at the bookstore. So I was like, you know what? Let me pop in real quick. Let me see what they got. And as soon as I walk in, one of the like owner's daughters is like, ew, socks with Crocs. Gross, Aaliyah. I was like, stop. I just came from working out. I was like, dang. I'm like, can I not just be?
The thing about teenagers is that, you know, like there's a collective teenager culture, and then as you get older, you discover your more own individual personality, and that becomes separate from everybody else.
Yeah.
So teenagers themselves are just kind of this like always existing unit that dictates what's cool.
Yeah.
And eventually, you know, you're just not in that unit anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, you just got to accept, like, you just become less cool when you get older.
Yeah. But
to the teens.
You know what I find hard, though? And maybe this is just me. I find it hard, like, I think because, like you said, like, when you're a teenager, you kind of follow this, like, group. Like, you follow what the group is doing.
Yeah.
But now that I am an adult, it's like I have the hardest time, like, finding myself because it's not being dictated by a group, like, especially when it comes to, like, clothes, like, my personal style. It's like I can't figure
lost.
out. Yeah, I'm like, I cannot figure out my personal style because it's like
Flannels.
I'm so used to having like followed the trends and like followed whatever. And it's like I am too old to follow the trends. Like I walk past a store that I would have shopped in back in the day, and I'm like, I literally will not walk in there because it feels too young for me.
Yeah.
But I'm not old enough to wear like, I don't know, to go into other stores that like are for older people. So It's like I feel so lost, and I feel like I don't have a cohesive like self like expression, I guess. That I don't know.
Figuring it out.
Yeah.
You know, I think for me, once I hit 30, it felt like a switch just kind of flipped to where it was just like, this is me.
I love that.
This is what I am now.
Yeah.
You know, like when it's winter, I like to wear a lot of flannels.
Yeah.
And I had one of my friends who, he has his finger on the cultural pulse a bit more than I think the average person our age, and he roasted me. Oh my god.
You're like, what is that word that they use?
That was the oldest thing that I could have said.
That's so funny.
He roasted me about wearing flannels all the time. He was like, that was like such a thing like 10 years ago or whatever. People aren't wearing that anymore. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. This is just my look now.
Yeah. I literally text my best friend for help. I'm like, do I buy this? And she's like, that is the grossest thing I've ever seen. No. And I'm like,
no.
That's why I love her. She's very honest. She's like, no, absolutely not. And I'm like, okay. Like everything for our wedding, she has had a say in it because I was like, I need your help. You have the best eye. You have the best fashion sense, the best like decor sense. Like, you know everything. I need you to help me make decisions because I will make the wrong ones.
I think the most adventurous fashion choice I've made in recent memory was wearing white shoes again, white sneakers. And that I will say that one has paid off.
Yeah.
I'm liking that look a lot.
Yeah.
So that's really diversified my wardrobe. I was wearing black shoes for a long time, exclusively.
Yeah. I know. I feel like I either dress like a librarian or I just put on the easiest and comfiest thing. Like I am always wearing a good flowy jumpsuit because it's just one piece. You don't have to style it. You just slip it on. So yeah. But
this is the stuff that indicates our age.
I know.
Well, hit me with the facts.
Yes. All right. So, fun fact. This film was shot in order, which I feel like very few films are.
No way.
Yeah.
E.T. was also shot in order.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it an 80s thing?
There's a reason for it in E.T., but I don't know if you have a reason.
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
In E.T., the reason was to maximize the emotional impact because it had a lot of child actors, and at the end of E.T., he leaves. Spoiler alert. But that really that was like saying goodbye to the production too, and that really like heightened the emotions from the child actors at the end of the movie.
That makes sense.
Yeah, anyway, spoilers for that. Our next segment.
Got you. Yeah, I'm not sure about this one. I will say, so you kind of mentioned like there felt like some like misplaced things in this movie that like didn't really have a lot of context. I feel like especially the ending where it's like Emilio and like Allie's character like kiss and things. It just feels so random and thrown in there. So it seems like there were quite a few scenes that were cut from the movie. And I think that's kind of why some of those other scenes feel very like random and kind of thrown in. But if you watch the movie on TV, they include some of those like missing scenes to like because of the airtime and like the way it needed to be. They would like throw in extra scenes. And in the trailer, there are some deleted scenes that don't actually end up in the movie. So those scenes exist, and I think you can actually like look up on YouTube like deleted scenes from Breakfast Club and watch them. Yeah,
this movie kind of feels like let's say the movie's 10 scenes. It's more than 10 scenes, but let's say it's 10 scenes. Mm-hmm. It feels like scenes 1, 2, 7, and 10 all need to be where they are, and then you could take the remaining scenes and shuffle them every time you watch it, and you'd get the same experience.
Yeah, because there's some just like filler nonsense, them running or dancing or whatever.
Yeah.
But those are like also fun. They kind of break up those like really emotional scenes, I guess. And like some of them are iconic. Like the dancing on the table with the guys doing that like little dance is like one of the most iconic scenes. All right. So the scene where they're all talking about why they're in detention, and also other moments in the movie are improvised. And so John Hughes like really encouraged the actors to improvise whatever they wanted to, which I thought is amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. Judd Nelson, who plays Spender, stayed in character off camera and was like even like bullying like Molly Ringwald and almost got fired for it. But I think the guy who plays the principal in the movie like talked to John Hughes and was like, he's just trying to like find his character, like, you know, just let it slide. And so they kept him in there. But I was like, good on John Hughes though to be like, you're bullying, bye.
I was kind of surprised how much Judd Nelson's character really feels like the main character. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily like the main character, but like the main one of the group. For some reason I always thought Emilio Estevez's character was more of the main person, but he really isn't at all.
Yeah, but it makes sense for Bender to be kind of like the main person because he's the instigator. He's the one that gets everyone out of their shell and like really pulls things out of people.
Yeah.
Like had he not been in detention, they probably wouldn't have said a word to each other, you know?
Right.
So, yeah. Let's see. I lost where I was. Oh, okay. I thought this was really interesting. So, hold on. Trigger warning. Let me put that out there.
Oh.
Trigger
I know where
warning.
this is going.
Yeah. So the brainy character, the character's name is Brian, talks about why he's in detention, and he mentions that the principal or someone like found a gun in his locker. Turns out the gun was a flare gun, which like they laugh about after the fact, but you know, it's this really serious moment and you learn a little bit more about like his character, his relationship with his parents, how much pressure he's on, etc.
Under.
But in the beginning of the movie, and I didn't notice this, in the beginning of the movie, there's like different just like shots of the hallways at the school and the classrooms, and you can see the damage that the flare gun, how he got caught is the flare gun went off in his locker, and you can see the damage of the flare gun on the locker.
Oh.
So it's a little foreshadowing, which I did not even realize, and I've seen this movie quite a bit. So in 2018, Molly Ringwald wrote an article for the New Yorker, and she was basically just like criticizing the movie for basically like everything Bender does in the movie. So like Bender is just like sexually harasses her character. It's just like
borderline sexually assaults her character.
Yeah,
in one
like
scene.
Basically assaults her, bullies her. And then
by the end of the movie, she's
in a
like,
relationship. Yeah,
I want to kiss this man.
Exactly. And so she kind of talked about like her thoughts about that and not enjoying that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, very fair. Because the relationships the romantic relationships, or I guess intimate relationships that form by the end of this movie feel like, why?
Well, I think the one with Emilio and Allie makes sense. So there is a deleted part that like provides a little bit more dialogue around like them getting together, but I think it makes sense because in the movie Emilio is kind of the only one who really goes up to her privately and is like,
what's wrong?
You can talk to me, like I'm a safe space, like tell me what's up, like what's going on. And then she kind of like confides in him to an extent to the
extent that her character would, I guess.
She like confirms what he's probably thinking, and that's really all they need to do. And so like for me, that one I'm not so like about. It's just like, I mean, that went from 0 to 100, but like whatever, it makes sense. But yeah, the whole like Molly getting with Judd's character, I'm like, what are we doing here? And so the last fun fact that I have, if anyone's familiar with the Bechdel test, it's basically these 3 sets of rules that movies kind of get evaluated on. And so the first rule, and this is like about
feminism.
Yeah, it's like a very.
I knew that. Yeah.
Like, it's a very like.
Oh, I'm sure this movie
thing.
fails All of it.
Just wait. So the rules of the Bechdel test. It has to have at least 2 women in it, named women in it. They can't be like side random characters we don't know. 2 named women in it. They have to talk to each other. And it has to be about anything besides a man.
Yes.
This movie passes.
Oh, really?
However, a lot of people in like comments are like, oh, but it really shouldn't, because the only moment where we see the 2 women characters talk to each other is at the very end when Molly does Allie's makeup, and it's such a short moment, and it's like they're talking about makeup, but the whole purpose of the scene is to like make Allie prettier so that she ends up getting the guy, because she's like, you know, all done up and looks a little bit more feminine, and like whatever. So everyone's like,
I don't know. I think that's a technicality.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't.
Yeah, I would not count it.
No. I would not call this a feminist film.
Oh no, no one is.
Yeah.
Trust me. I was like on the Bechdel test websites and just seeing the comments, everyone was like, no. Like respectfully, no.
Yeah.
Should not count. So yeah. So I just thought it was interesting that it technically passes. Because I was like, that's crazy. So yeah. That's all the facts that I have.
Nice. Shall we move on?
Let's do it.
All right.
Oh, now I feel like you when you're like, oh, I gotta talk some more.
Yeah, enjoy it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I was assigned E.T., directed by our favorite guy, Steven Spielberg, my bestie. And it came out in 1982. So this movie is...
Which is very important.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll get into it.
Okay. So this movie is about a kid named Elliot who discovers a cute I put that in quotations, cute little alien that was accidentally left behind on Earth. So the 2 end up becoming friends, and they establish a like literal connection, like physiologically what E.T. feels, Elliot can feel. But things take a turn for the worse as E.T. begins to deteriorate and desperately needs to get back home. So Elliot and his siblings come up with a plan to help E.T. contact his home, but it gets busted by NASA officials. And well, they never directly state that they're NASA officials, but at a later point they show up in like full astronaut costumes, which makes no sense.
They're definitely NASA.
Yeah. So because E.T. is now unable to get home, he begins to die. And as he's dying, his connection with Elliot also like dies. It just dissipates. And so as the NASA officials now have both Elliot and him in like custody. They're doing like medical things, measuring their heart rate and everything. And at some point Elliot like fully kind of disconnects from E.T. and is no longer feeling what E.T. is feeling, and E.T. passes away. Sad. And so Elliot is very clearly distraught at this time, but things look up when the call that E.T. had made a little bit earlier in the movie, had gone through, and now his family, his alien family, are on their way to come pick him up from his friend's house.
Because E.T. phoned home.
Yep. And so because they're on their way, E.T. comes back to life. And they are able to kind of make a quick escape from the hands of the NASA officials and get him back to his family safely. And that is the end of the movie.
Yay.
He gets back home. So my thoughts. I enjoyed this movie. I will say this movie was different from what I thought it would be. Not a lot happens. I expected E.T. to interact with the family more, and really E.T.'s home alone a lot. For majority of the movie. And we don't really see him. I mean, we see him interact with the family a little bit.
I remember watching this for the first time and thinking I was surprised that his siblings find out about E.T. so early on.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I thought it would be like, everybody learns at the end that he's been around the whole time, but it's like pretty much as soon as Elliot becomes friends with E.T., it's like a scene later. He's like,
yeah.
He's got his brother and sister in on it.
Yeah. I feel like I kind of knew that the siblings would find out at least decently early, because I feel like the thing that I'm most familiar with is like little Drew Barrymore screaming when she sees him. So I was like, well, at some point she's going to find out.
That's fair.
But yeah, I don't know. I just I thought it was more of like E.T.'s gonna go out and about with Elliot, and that, because I always knew, I would always see the iconic scene where he's like in the basket of the bike, kind of covered up, and they're flying. So I thought he was gonna take him around town, in the bike, and be like, this is Earth. But E.T.'s
there's a Halloween scene.
Yeah, but that's just them going from one point to the next type of, and he's covered in a sheet.
Yeah.
I don't, it's like that's their plan to get him to set up his device or whatever to call home. So I just thought it was a little bit more, there was going to be more interactivity, I guess, with other people.
And this is where I would like to point out that the movie was made in 1982, and these animatronics were
not great.
Well, very good at the time.
Yeah.
But very limited.
Yeah.
And so...
But we see him moving around so much in the house. He drinks beer, which is also crazy that wasn't a children's movie and got away with being in a children's movie. And Elliot gets drunk. I was like, what is this movie rated?
Yeah, that was... I would also, again, like to point out 1982.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah...
to really contextualize that, you got to think the original Star Wars came out in 1977.
Yeah.
Just 5 years before this.
Yeah.
And you watch that original Star Wars and you're like, that is an old movie.
Yeah.
And so 1982 is not that long after.
Yeah.
I just checked Escape from New York. That movie feels so much older than E.T., but it's only a year older than E.T.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie feels pretty modern. It feels more like a late 80s movie than it does an early 80s movie.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to how well made it was.
Oh, no. I think it's a fantastically made movie. I said, I enjoyed it. I just thought the story was different. I don't know. For my expectation of it, I thought the story was going to be a little bit different.
Just real quick, so the most of the full body puppetry was done by a man that was 2 feet and 10 inches tall.
Wow.
But the kitchen scenes were performed by a 12-year-old boy who was born without legs, but was an expert at walking on his hands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Which if that, to me, that's if that's how they were getting the shots of E.T., it's it kind of makes sense that you have a very limited scope of scenes in which you can actually put E.T. in.
Yeah.
Scenes in scenarios.
Right.
Yeah.
Got you. That makes sense. So okay, the things that confused me about this movie, there are specific scenes that I found very confusing.
Oh yeah.
The first is just
I probably agree with you.
Yeah. The first is just I don't understand the powers that E.T. has and how it works. He has telepathic powers, right? Which is he can levitate stuff. He can what were the other things he could do? He could
phone home.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he could heal you.
He healed Elliot at one point.
What really confused me was the connection between him and Elliot.
Yeah, they formed a telepathic, almost psychic connection.
Yeah.
So when E.T. gets drunk at home, Elliot is getting drunk at school.
But that's what doesn't make sense to me. So okay, when I think of a telepathic,
if it's a psychic connection,
well, I'm thinking I can think your thoughts, you can think my thoughts, I can communicate to you with my mind. Not you're gonna feel what I feel.
Yeah, and so in the lore of E.T.,
the E.T. lore.
Yeah.
It goes
in this case, it's not necessarily that. It's more of a mental synchronization. You know what I mean?
How does that
their minds sync up. Their mental states sync up. And that's why, at the end of the movie, Elliot starts getting really sick when E.T.'s getting really sick. And so when E.T.
more than the mind. Like when you're sick, it's not your mind saying I'm sick. It's your body's actually fighting off something.
Okay, but but your brain is the thing that is responding to
that's your perception of
your
how
body's,
you feel.
Well, yeah, your body's the brain is the command center of the whole body.
Yeah.
So it stands to reason.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know.
The whole Elliot getting drunk at school thing I did think was pretty weird.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that hard to understand.
Got you. I guess. Yeah. I just don't know how telepathy works.
I mean, it's made up.
Be whatever you want. Yeah. How is it typically portrayed in media?
Steven Spielberg said he's going to have telepathy and telekinetic powers, and we're
be
just
able to heal, and
they'll be psychically linked.
Yeah,
and that's fine, and he can heal people. Yeah,
whatever we need him to do.
Yeah,
got you. Okay, other thing that I didn't understand. So in the scene where they are it's Halloween, and they have concocted this plan to basically get E.T. to this area in the mountains where he can set up his little device and contact his family. But to do that, they have Gertie, which is Drew Barrymore's character, waiting at the drop-off, and they're, to get past the mom, gonna pretend that E.T. is Gertie, that they're just taking out for trick-or-treating. But my question, so the scene starts off with Gertie's at home, and he's like, all right, you're going to meet us at the drop-off. And she's like, got it. And then, all of a sudden, she's on the top of the mountain. And I'm like, how did this little girl who's 4 by herself, because the mom didn't drop her off at the drop-off point, how the heck did she get up there?
She biked. You're thinking too hard about it.
I'm like, what parent is going to let their little daughter, how?
All right. You're thinking too hard about it, because I watched this movie and Breakfast Club, both 80s movies.
Yeah.
And I just realized in watching both of these that these movies are weird because of the time that they were made in.
Yeah.
People were okay with not thinking about it. Not
everything needed to be explained.
Exactly. Not everything needed to make sense all the time.
Yeah.
So, when we come at it with this 2024 lens where we've seen movies that do make a lot of sense, you see that and you're like, wait a minute, that's weird. But back then, people just didn't think twice about it. You know?
Yeah.
And they didn't need to.
It was crazy. I was like, how did this little girl get up there?
Yeah.
She was so stinking cute. It's you forget for a moment that Drew Barrymore's a grown woman now. And I'm just like, oh my God, what an adorable little girl.
Apparently she ad-libbed when she looks at E.T.'s feet and she says, I don't like his feet. She ad-libbed that because there was actually a bunch of wires coming out of the puppet's feet.
Oh.
But then when there's a scene where Elliot is telling her only little kids can see him, so you can't tell mom, and she's like, give me a break. Mm-hmm. She ad-libbed that too.
Oh my God. I mean,
talent.
Yeah. I mean, you go back and watch her little when she was on the talk shows, as a little girl, and she's just so clever. She's just so witty. I love Drew Barrymore. Okay. We already talked about NASA showing up in full astronaut clothes and why? What did those need to be put on for? It's Earth. Why are you wearing astronaut gear? And if you're trying to protect yourself from ET, then later on in the movie, once they think he's dead, once they think he's dead, they're taking off all their clothes. And I'm like, well, he's still there.
I'm sure that was explained somewhere in the trivia, but I gotta say, this had to have been one of the longest trivia sections
I bet
I have ever seen.
I bet.
Ever.
Yeah.
Because I usually go through I usually try to go through all of it and take out the best stuff, and then I also make sure that I go all the way to the bottom, go to the spoiler trivia as well. Mm-hmm. So when I got to a point where I was like, I saw the scroll bar and I had barely even dented it. I got maybe like 10% of the way down and was like, this is too much. So I was like, I've got enough facts. And then I scrolled down all the way down to the spoilers, and there were facts down there at the bottom right before the spoilers that were like, who could possibly know that?
Yeah.
Or who would care?
Yeah.
There's too much on this movie.
Oh, I bet.
Anyway, so that might have been in there, but I didn't see it. But I agree with you. When I was like 10 years old and I like fully watched the whole movie, like, you know, we all kind of knew about E.T. growing up.
Yeah.
But like when I fully watched the whole movie when I was 10, it confused me. And it confuses me now.
Yeah. It's like, what? The last thing I'll say about this movie, and then you can hit me with your facts. The kid who plays Elliot, phenomenal acting. Like, that is, especially the like death scene where like E.T.'s dying and he is just full emotion. It's like so raw and like your heart hurts for him. It's just, oh, he was so good. I was like, well done, kid.
Have you seen the his audition video on YouTube?
No.
Oh, it's good. It's
man.
so he I did have a piece of trivia on that. Henry Thomas is that kid that plays Elliot, his name. During his audition, he thought about the day that his dog had died to like express sadness during his audition, and apparently that made Steven Spielberg cry and offered him the role like on the spot. And then when you watch his audition tape, it's like, he's delivering his lines and then he like cries, and then you just hear Spielberg in the background go, all right, kid, you got the part.
Yeah, I mean, it is just, I don't think I've ever seen a kid just crush it with the emotion in that kind of way. Like, it was like full powered emotion. Even little Drew Barrymore, like, she was in tears. I was like, no, not baby Drew. Oh my God. Like, it was just, oh, it was so good.
Yep.
Wow, those kids deserve Oscars. I mean, Drew Barrymore is like a grown adult now. They are both, well, all of them are. But I'm like, they should have gotten Oscars then.
Any other thoughts?
Nope.
All right. I didn't have this written down, but let's go through it. This movie won 4 Oscars, and it was nominated for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Did the kids win any?
No. The kids weren't even nominated.
What do they call it? Snub.
Yeah, they were snubbed at the Oscars. Yeah. So it won the Oscar for Best Sound, Best Visual Effects, Best Sound Effects, and Best Original Score. It was also nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Writing, Best Cinematography, and Best Film Editing.
Wow.
Yeah, golly.
Makes sense.
Golly. This film had a budget of $10.5 million.
That's a lot, right?
That is, for 1982, that's quite a big sum. For nowadays,
I mean,
that's
the Marvels are like
nothing.
hundreds of millions of dollars, but
yeah, nowadays it's nothing. Guess what the gross was for this movie worldwide?
Ooh, $50 million.
$50 million. You think E.T. made $50 million?
I don't know. I'm bad at this. I always am like way over or way under.
Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. Let's dissect it.
Wait, did Jaws come out before this?
Jaws did come out before this, and Jaws was kind of responsible for creating like the summer blockbuster film.
When did Jurassic Park come out?
1993.
90s, yeah.
So Jaws came out in 75. This came out in 82. So somewhere in between.
100 million.
Okay. All right.
125 million.
125 million. Okay. All right. So this movie grossed $792 million in 1982.
Only made with 10 million?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
In 1982, this was considered the highest grossing movie of all time when it came out, only to be beaten by Jurassic Park.
Okay, I mean, Jurassic Park is like the greatest.
Yeah.
It never gets old. It's like the best practical effects ever.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that it
Yeah.
would get beaten.
But then Jurassic Park was, which Jurassic Park is also Steven Spielberg. So
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg beat himself.
Right.
And then James Cameron came out with Titanic, and he broke the record. But then Titanic
Got beat
James
by
Cameron
Avatar.
So then James Cameron beat himself.
Wow. So
Yeah.
really, the greatest of all time, Steven Spielberg and James Cameron.
Yeah.
They're no one can match them.
So yeah, it was considered the highest grossing of all time. Yeah, okay, yeah. It is, if you adjust for inflation, it would be the fourth highest grossing movie of all time.
Wow.
It also has the
How do they adjust for inflation? How do
mean-
they determine what that would be? Because it like changes all the time, you know?
I'm not gonna get into it because I don't know.
Yeah.
But they just track inflation year over year, and then they run the numbers.
Like a percentage.
I don't
or
imagine it's
something?
not. Yeah, it's just a combination of percentages.
Yeah.
So this movie actually had the longest theatrical run ever. How long do you think it was?
A year.
It was a year.
That's crazy.
Over a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Which explains
that
why
makes
it
sense.
made so much money.
And I can understand, like, especially for kids, you know, like I can understand, like you want to watch it over and over and over, like keep going to the movies, you know, you're bored, let's go see E.T., you know?
Yeah, so Steven Spielberg actually did not want to release this movie on home video after the movie had finished its theatrical run over the course of that year, because he thought it was going to cheapen the movie's legacy, and like he kind of saw it as this, like, you know, it's a family motion picture spectacle event. You got to go to the theater and share in that with your family. And the Universal Pictures actually like upheld his wishes. So the movie actually became like one of the most pirated movies of all time.
Oh my
gosh. Because they didn't release it on home video until 1988.
Wow.
6 years later. Yeah. You could not watch E.T. at home.
I'm like, how were people pirating movies back in the day?
I know, right? Well, so that's the thing. They would get they got a bunch of complaints from angry parents and children because they felt like they were getting ripped off because they were watching a pirated version of the movie that was like really crap quality on a videotape. And when they did finally release the movie in 1988, it sold gangbusters. They had sold 15 million cassette tapes by the end of 1988. And to confound video pirates, that's what it says. IMDb trivia, everybody. To confound video pirates, the cassettes were made out of green plastic. Just to, I guess.
Oh, could you not?
So
like,
that you
buy
know,
that?
like, yeah, I guess. So you knew it was a legit copy if it was green.
My God,
Which is so wild. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like we owned E.T. on VHS, but I was too afraid to watch it. I didn't really like alien things when I was a kid. Yeah, I didn't really like alien stuff. So like I don't know. I always thought it was really scary, and he looked kind of scary to me, so I never saw it.
So have you ever heard of the E.T. video game?
Nope.
Oh. So the E.T. video game at the time that it came out
I'm like, what do you do?
was considered one of the greatest games ever made.
Wow. Are you just trying to get him home? Like,
I am fully joking. It was considered it was considered one of like the worst critical and commercial failures in video games of all time.
Did Steven Spielberg play a role in it? Or?
No, I doubt he was involved. I have watched the gameplay.
Yeah.
It is rough.
Yeah.
It's like it looks it's boring. It's like you play as this little alien in the middle of the desert, and you can't even tell that it's E.T.
Yeah.
And you just like fall into holes. And then you climb your way back up, and then you look like you are trying to get back to your spaceship, but like you just keep falling in holes, and it's super boring.
Yeah.
And nobody bought it.
Yeah.
And this is like a very big piece of video game history because thousands of copies of the game that never got sold were just buried in a landfill. And
oh my
this
gosh,
is like,
we should go dig it up. Find all the E.T. games.
That's people joke about that all the time. It's in like New Mexico or something. There's just like a landfill in New Mexico.
Treasure.
Or it's like Arizona maybe.
Yeah.
But just like in the middle of the desert, there's a landfill full of like old NES cartridges
Why was
of
that the way?
ET games.
Why was that the method?
Oh, I have no idea.
Could you not recycle it or something?
I don't know. But it's just like everybody that knows that knows that. Like, no, if you know about the ET video game, you know that the big thing surrounding it is that there's just thousands of copies just buried.
Weird.
It's super weird.
Can you imagine someone's like building a house and they like are like digging up, I don't know, like for the foundation or something. They're like, we found all these ET video games on your property.
Yeah.
What would you like us to do with it?
All right. So the rest of my facts are kind of like random. I've kind of been like switching around on my, I've been going out of order here. So I'm just going to kind of go through the rest of them. Okay. So, okay. So the lead writer of this movie, with Steven Spielberg was Melissa Matheson, who went on to get married to Harrison Ford.
Wow. Was
she
his wife when he had the affair?
I don't know anything about that. Don't ask me about that. I don't know.
Well, you said went on to marry, and that Star Wars came out.
So,
before.
Star Wars came out in 1977.
Yeah.
Matheson and Spielberg worked on the script for this movie while they were filming Raiders of the Lost Ark. And she was there dating Harrison Ford and also working on E.T. with
when did that come out?
Steven. The first Indiana Jones?
Yeah.
I think 1980? 1981 maybe?
Gotcha.
So Spielberg and Matheson came up with a concept for a sequel to E.T. called Nocturnal Fears. And in this, Elliot and his friends were going to get kidnapped by some aliens, and E.T. was going to have to
save the day. And
you were going to find out that E.T.'s name was actually Zrek, and that,
I'm glad that didn't happen.
And so E.T. and his space friends were at war with these other aliens, and they kind of just realized like, okay,
this is dumb.
Yeah, it says
it's
here
Power Rangers.
They shook hands on the fact that there was not going to be a sequel. Yeah. But what's crazy is, and this is just something that I know, I didn't see this in the trivia, I just know this.
Yeah.
At Universal Studios, there was an E.T. ride for a really long time. Yeah. And when you'd be in line, Steven Spielberg is like explaining to you like the story of the ride. And he's telling the rider, like, you're going on like E.T.'s space adventure, and you got to help him out, and you have to find like his teacher, like his mentor, who is also the same alien species that E.T. is, and his mentor's name is Botanicus, which is weird. So, and Botanicus like was a animatronic in the ride, and he had like a beard and all of this stuff, and it's just like, why?
Yeah, I remember the very first time I ever went to Universal, I was a kid. I was probably like 6 or 7. And again, I like didn't really like alien things, so I was too afraid to go on the ET ride and the Men in Black ride. So I never got as an adult, we went on the Men in Black ride, and that was my first time being on the Men in Black ride. But I never got to ride the ET ride, and I think it doesn't exist anymore. I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist anymore.
I don't think it exists anymore, no.
And that was like my biggest regret. I like regret not getting on the freaking ET ride, but I was a little scaredy cat baby.
Understandable.
Yeah.
I think it was a dark ride, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, so the 3 rides I refused to get on: E.T., Men in Black, and Mummy.
Oh, the Men in Black and the Mummy rides are pretty good.
I know, but I was young. I mean, now as an adult, I've been on Mummy and I've been on Men in Black. But
Understandable. Extra little bit of E.T. lore. There was a novelization of the film, and in the novelization, you learn that E.T. is over 10 million years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So some interesting screening events that happened for E.T. The first is the film's like, let me find the note here. It was like, it had an unofficial screening at Cannes. It was like an unofficial submission to Cannes. Oh, yeah, here we go.
I was like, what's Cannes?
Sorry, Cannes. Cannes Film Festival.
Cannes.
Yeah, Cannes. It was test screened at Cannes as an unofficial entry, and was apparently what? Because I'm saying Cannes.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. It was test screened at Cannes as an unofficial entry and received a standing ovation. Nice. Which some of the actual entries did not. So it was kind of a big deal.
Dang.
I know. So like people just fell in love with E.T. when it came out. So much so that even the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, got a personal screening by Steven Spielberg at the White House on June 27th, 1982.
If I were freaking president, first of all, they would take me out of office because I would not be doing the duties I need to be doing.
Fair enough.
Instead, I would just use my power and be like, I want this person to come and sit and watch this movie with me. I'm like, call Seth Rogen, have him show me his new movie. Like, I would be like, abusing my power. I'd be like, oh my gosh, call up Margot Robbie. What's she working on?
Oh
like,
my
let's
gosh.
see. Call up Steven Spielberg. I want to have lunch. And I want to have a Steven Spielberg movie marathon. Tell him to bring a dinosaur.
Oh my gosh. So this is an interesting fact that I read, and it might speak to why the film was so popular for some groups. I think I think people could resonate with why people could resonate with the movie regardless, because it's like an emotional film and it's very well made. It's made in 1982, but some people also thought that the movie had elements of like a Christian allegory, in that, like, E.T., he like dies, comes back to life.
Wow.
Very much like Jesus. And
they were okay with Jesus drinking beer?
Well, probably not. But there's some parallels that people had pointed out. Yeah. And Spielberg was like,
no.
Yeah, he was like, no, like that's all just a coincidence. My mom is a devout Jewish woman, and she would never forgive me if I did that. So, but I do think that like there might be something to that, of like, if people were having that interpretation, then it's kind of like, it's speaking to a lot of people in different ways.
Yeah. I mean, we all like a good comeback story, and how you want to interpret that is how you want to interpret that. Yeah.
All right, remaining facts. Apparently John Williams, he won an Oscar for his score for this movie, and apparently he was really struggling with the end of the score, and because usually the film's been edited and then the score is put on top of the movie to fit the editing, and he was really struggling with that, and Spielberg was like, all right, let's stop looking at the movie, just play the score how you want to play it. And he played it, and then Spielberg ended up re-editing the movie to his score. Wow. Which is very atypical, but it ended up winning the Oscar for Best Original Score, so all worked out. And apparently they'd also done that for it wasn't the first time they had done that. They had done that for Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1977. So wow.
To have so much influence in the composing world, I guess, to where the director's like, you know what? Do your magic and I'll work around you.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
I mean, John Williams did like all of the George Lucas and Steven Spielberg movies, you know, and
he's the guy.
You're right. That's partly why we consider the George Lucas and Spielberg's movies to be so godly. That's true. Because of the music of John Williams.
Yeah. I wish I had that kind of sense. Like, I wish I had. That's such a cool talent. Like, to be able to do that, because it's so important to the way a person feels a movie. And like, it's so cool. And like, also my favorite study music. I'm like, oh yeah, hit me with that Jurassic Park theme song.
Music is like, it's the emotional essence of the movie that when you think back about the movie, I think like the thing that you're thinking about the most is the music. And that's like, I listen to so many soundtracks of things because that to me feels like the closest I can get to reliving anything that had music in it that I liked without having to go actually re-experience that thing.
I feel like, and I wonder how you feel about this, because I feel like what makes like John Williams and stuff so great is because it's like orchestras. Like, I feel like, what is it, orchestral, is that the word you say? Orchestral music has a much deeper impact for me than something like, you know, the Challengers soundtrack, which I love the Challengers soundtrack, but because it doesn't have the same kind of like grandness to it.
There's an emotion to the full orchestra.
Yeah.
You know, there's a history there.
Yeah. I really want to go to, and I get ads for this all the time, but you know, like in places where they play movies and they have a live orchestra doing the
like
music.
Harry Potter and stuff like that.
There's I actually got an ad for one today for Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was really weird. But I really want to go to one of those because I feel like it would just be so much fun and like.
I've been to the Legend of Zelda Symphony, like it was like the 25th anniversary and then the 30th anniversary. Those were a lot of fun.
I know. I've been debating like if I want to spend the money to get us Hans Zimmer tickets when he's in Georgia, because it's like Labor Day weekend. And I'm like, that could be kind of fun.
I would like low-key enjoy that more than like a normal concert.
No, I would too. They're just really expensive tickets. So I'm like, and then we have to travel. And so I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, let me get through the rest of these facts. Most of the movie is shot from eye level of a child to further connect the audience to the main characters.
I kind of miss being a child.
I feel that. So Richard Attenborough, who I think Attenborough, that's the like nature narrator guy. But I guess he also
does like Planet Earth and stuff.
I think so. I might be mixing up my Attenboroughs, but I think that's the same guy.
It's actually Nancy Myers.
You know what? Just because you said that, I'm going to Google this up right now. Make sure I'm getting this correct.
Oh man.
Oh, okay. No, I'm glad you brought this up because I.
It is Nancy Myers.
No, I was getting this wrong.
Oh, wow.
So, well, let's see. Richard Attenborough. Okay, so you know the old man from Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
That's Richard Attenborough.
Wow.
Yeah. So he directed a little movie in 1982 as well called Gandhi, which that movie won Best Picture that year.
Yeah. We watched it in school, I think.
Oh, interesting. I've never seen it. And you know, they're buds because like he was in Jurassic Park. So Richard Attenborough said that, you know, Gandhi won Best Picture that year, but he really was like, I feel like E.T. should have won because that is, quote, a quite extraordinary piece of cinema.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Very out of pocket fact. E.T.'s face was modeled after poet Carl Sandburg, Albert Einstein, and a pug dog.
That's messed up.
Yeah. I looked up Carl Sandburg's face and I was like, you know what? I see it. Yeah.
That's so messed up.
Yeah, here you go. You kind of see it. It's the cheeks. I feel like the cheekbones.
I was gonna say it's like eyes.
Yeah.
Dang. Sorry to that man.
Yeah. Go Google Carl Sandburg and tell me that's not E.T.
He doesn't look that much like E.T.
No, he doesn't. All right, next fact.
I'd be so offended. I would sue. I'd be like, Steven Spielberg, I hate you.
I know. So at the end of the movie, E.T. is like, in the emergency room, and he's got like a bunch of dying. He's got doctors and nurses working on him and all that. Which I'm
like, what are they gonna do? They don't know how to take care of an alien.
Well, all of those techs were actually, they all worked at the USC Medical Center, and they were told to treat E.T. the same that they would treat a real patient, so that the dialogue would seem real.
Did they improv the dialogue? Because low-key, they were like, because they were all like talking over each other, and it was kind of like a Miami Connection moment where they were saying some of them were saying some nonsense.
There were lines that were written, but like he thought, like, if I get real medical experts in here, they'll make the medical dialogue sound more real. Interesting.
My favorite part is like when E.T. like dies, someone's like, I think he's dead. And then someone was like, are you sure?
Yeah. I remember that.
Like the funniest thing.
He's like, I don't know, guys. I'm going to call it. Yeah. He's like, are you sure?
I know. They're like, I don't know if he's actually dead. I was like, why are they talking like that?
Well, that's why.
Like, can you imagine if they're working on humans and they're like, is that guy dead? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
So as you mentioned, there's a scene where Elliot gets drunk at school, and he like releases all of the frogs when they're supposed to be dissecting frogs that day, and he also ends up like kissing the girl that he has a crush on.
Yeah.
Which
was so random.
Apparently that took 3 or 4 takes to get right because Henry Thomas was very nervous.
Aww.
Kiss a girly.
What a little cutie.
All right, let's talk about Reese's Pieces.
Reese's Pieces.
And this is actually going to be one of my final facts.
Okay.
So they originally wanted, in the movie, Elliot is luring E.T. to his room by using bunches of Reese's Pieces. Yep. They originally wanted this to be M&M's. M&M's were very popular. Reese's Pieces were relatively unknown candy at the time.
I didn't know that they
existed back then?
Yeah, I didn't know they existed back then.
So Mars is the company that owns M&M's, and they had asked, like, hey, Mars, can we use M&M's in the movie? And they were like, nope, because E.T. is ugly and he's going to scare children. That is
another that poor man who they
I know.
I just immediately saw his face. Oh, the poor man.
Yeah.
But also, I bet they were so torn up about that.
Yeah,
after
because
the fact.
Reese's Pieces, its popularity skyrocketed after the movie came out.
Yeah. And I personally think Reese's Pieces are far superior to M&M's.
I do love Reese's Pieces.
Them. I don't even like Reese's Cups. I only like Reese's Pieces.
Interesting. I do like Reese's Cups. I like mini Reese's Cups. I like peanut M&M's more than I like Reese's Pieces, but I like Reese's Pieces more than I like regular M&M's. So this is actually considered like one of the first successful like product placements in a movie.
Wow.
It really kind of blew up after that, like just having your product placed in a movie. It wasn't the first. One of the most often credited product placements, like as the first product placement, was in the movie Superman in 1978, where you see that young Clark Kent is eating Cheerios.
Wow.
At home. Yeah. In Kansas.
What was it? In A Christmas Story, they had a product placement for Ovaltine.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, right.
I don't know. I don't know if
that was like a
actually
movie
did
that
it.
took place in the 50s, made in the 80s. It's not quite the same as like a popular product today, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
You're like, drink your Ovaltine, kids.
all right. Last two facts. The voice for E.T. was provided by an elderly woman who lived in Marin County, and she smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, which gave her voice this kind of like gruff quality that the sound effect guy really liked. She recorded for 9.5 hours, was paid $380. But they also recorded 16 other people's voices and different animals to like fully bring the voice of E.T. to life. So that also included like Spielberg himself, the sound design guy's sleeping wife who had a cold, a burp from his film professor, raccoons. What? Yeah. So like it's a combination of things, but like,
which I feel like is what Steven Spielberg does first, like the dinosaurs sounds or like combinations of different animals and stuff.
But yeah, in 1982, the woman that gave 9.5 hours of her time for
only
E.T.
$300,
given $380,
and it made $700 million.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw those box office numbers, I'd be calling Mr. Spielberg. Come on, sir. Cut me a little bit of a bigger check than 300. And I'm E.T. I am E.T. Crazy.
All right. Last thing I want to talk about is, and we didn't talk about this in the synopsis of the film, but let's talk about the guy with the keys.
Oh yeah, I kept being like, those keys are gonna come back. Those keys are gonna come back.
And the keys kept coming back, but then, and this is still something that like I didn't understand this that much as a kid. I like lightly understood it as a kid.
Yeah.
But even watching it like now, I was kind of like, that's a little weird. So that the guy with the keys is like Elliot's getting sick with E.T. at the end of the movie, and then the guy with the keys comes to Elliot, and he's with NASA, and he's like, E.T. came to me too. I've been like wanting him to go home since I was 10 years old or whatever. And it's like, huh?
Yeah. It made no sense.
It made no sense, right?
I just thought he was like pulling a fast one on the kid.
Right.
Trust him.
I thought he was too, but apparently there's like a moment where he like meets eyes with E.T. when he says that, and it's supposed to be like this recognition of like, yes, we know each other.
But like, how is he gonna say I've been trying to get him home when he
maybe
got
not
left?
Maybe not like I've been trying to get him home, because I think like I feel like E.T.'s family or whatever like maybe they've come
been to Earth.
They've been to Earth before. Yeah.
I was like, how many times have E.T. gotten left?
Right. Like, but like, so like maybe that guy when he was 10 years old was visited by E.T. and like became friends with him, and then they left, and then he comes back, and he's, you know, maybe that's why the guy joined NASA, because he's like, hey, yo, like, because aliens are freaking real.
I've seen some things.
Yeah. On his application, he's like, I used to hang out with aliens when I was 10.
I'd be like, red flag, he cannot be hired.
So yeah, that's more of a criticism of the movie than anything.
Sorry, I'm thinking about his application to NASA. Like, what's your prior work experience? Well, I am actually friends with an alien.
I'm friends with the aliens. Next time they come down, I know a guy. His name's Zrek.
I have hands-on experience with aliens.
I'm buds with Zrek and Botanicus. I know them all. They're 10 million years old.
That's so freaking funny.
Wild. All right, those are all my facts on E.T. I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, those were very interesting facts. I just love a good Steven Spielberg movie. It's just so good.
Well, contrary to what I said last week, I'm not in the countdown up to 100. I'm not going to do another Spielberg movie for my next assignment.
Gotcha.
But with that said, let's dive into the assignments.
Yep.
What do you got?
Oh, I'm first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I want to give you a choice. Would you like something animated or a Kind of like rom-com, but also has like some sadness to it.
I'm gonna go with the animated one.
Cool. You're not gonna be excited though.
Oh.
I'm giving you Sing.
Oh.
It's cute.
Okay. No. I mean, it's an Illumination film, so I'm not gonna hold my breath on enjoying it. But
Illumination, I don't care for their movies. I thought Despicable Me was okay, but I didn't understand like the obsession with it.
I've never liked Despicable Me.
Okay, but Despicable Me has a great soundtrack.
That's like saying Trolls has a good soundtrack.
No, Despicable Me had like hip hop. Like the soundtrack was like hip hop artists.
The song "Happy" by Pharrell Williams was made for Despicable Me 2, and that song is iconic. So I'll give you that.
Anyway, I'm also not a big fan of Illumination, but I do like Sing.
All right.
I thought it was cute. I've seen it.
Have you seen Sing 2?
No, I haven't.
Then Sing 1 couldn't have been that good.
I wanted to Sing 2, and you were like, "Oh, I'm not going to see that."
Yeah,
and I don't know if it's streaming anywhere.
It's streaming.
Oh, well then I need to watch it.
I mean, you can like rent it, maybe. I don't know.
I'm not paying money.
Well, then
not for the second one.
Sing 1 can't be that good.
No, not for the second one. The first one's cute.
All right.
It'll be an easy watch.
If you like it so much, why aren't you excited for the sequel?
I was when it came out, and then I forgot about it.
And you won't even pay money to watch it.
No.
Put some respect on the Sing IP name.
I don't pay money to watch cartoons unless it's going to be Studio Ghibli or like what seems like a good Disney movie.
All right, shoot.
Or Shrek. I'd pay to see Shrek.
Oh, okay.
But just Shrek or Shrek 2. If it got re-released.
Okay. Like
which
in
it did
a theater?
get re-released. Yeah, Shrek 2 got re-released in a theater like a month or so ago.
I feel like I heard about that.
Yeah.
Maybe Alamo did a screening or something. Or?
It was like movie theaters across the nation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Sing. Interesting. Fun. I'll watch it. I'm looking forward to having my first experience with Sing. I'm expecting it to be. I actually have an expectation for it to be somewhat good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. There's that. Okay. I, for weeks, have been talking about assigning you a John Carpenter movie from the 80s, and it's finally time. There's nothing to interrupt me from assigning you this movie now. So, I'm going for it, and this is kind of a weird movie.
Actually, you should assign me. I'm just kidding.
Nope. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you say. This is kind of a weird movie, and you might have some thoughts on certain aspects of the movie, but just know that, to my knowledge, I've done my research, and it's not as problematic of a movie as you think it is, but it is easy to look at and say, this could be problematic. But there is evidence to back up that this movie is actually... There are certain aspects of the production of the movie that would be problematic, I think. Like, it wouldn't be made today, but at the time, it was very...
The 80s were wild.
I know.
Anything went in the 80s.
Yeah. At the time... the movie is Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah. John Carpenter movie, which like has Kurt Russell in it.
Snake Plissken, I love him.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's a very fun movie.
Yeah.
There are going to be things in this movie that you might think like, is this problematic in how it portrays Asian people? And when you look at the writing team for the movie, it's like a bunch of white guys. That's the thing that's like, maybe not so good.
Yeah.
But when you look at the movie in the context of the time, Kurt Russell's character is like kind of like the dumb character, and it has like one of the most robust cast of Asian actors playing Asian characters for the time. And
no Indiana Jones mess.
And there is a character who is friends with Kurt Russell who is like a much more capable character than Kurt Russell's character is. Yeah. So it's actually like, Anyway, I'm getting into facts a little early, but I just want to kind of clarify.
I'm like, if this movie requires so much setup, then maybe it is trash.
I'm kidding. It's a very like visually interesting movie.
Yeah.
In some ways that are maybe like not great, and then other ways that are like, yo, this movie's kind of like fun in an insane way.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to watching it again.
Cool.
Yeah. It's John Carpenter.
Nice. I've definitely heard of it, so I'm curious to see what it's all about.
Yeah. So next week will be Big Trouble in Little China and Sing. Look forward to that. Yeah. I'm going to be at a bachelor party for the next few days, so the next episode might not come out for another 2 weeks. So sit tight, but no more vacations planned for a while after that.
Well,
and
I have a vacation.
You have a vacation.
In August.
Okay. But we'll see you then. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.